Hey everybody, welcome to Outlier on Air. This is the podcast where we talk to entrepreneurs from all over the world doing amazing things. As always, I'm your host, Ever Gonzalez. On today's episode, we have Elwood. He is a TV film director, podcaster, political activist, and comedian. Graham, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, we're excited to have you for a couple different reasons. We've kind of been following your career a little bit for the last while, but I actually got to meet you in person in LA a few weeks ago at our Outlier Podcast Festival, and you definitely killed it. You were a keynote speaker. You being a professional and knowing a little bit about you, I figured that you would bring the funny, right? That you would be a complete professional up there. But I was really surprised, maybe not surprised, but I was really excited about the fact that you brought a lot of heart and soul into it as well, right? A lot of people laughing, a lot of people having a good time, but you talked about some pretty personal things that I kind of want to talk about on the show as well. So again, thank you for not only coming to being a keynote at our festival, but being on our show today.
Well, Ever, thank you for having me today. And really, I appreciate you asking me to give the keynote speech at the Outlier. It was really cool. You know, I've been to a lot of tech conferences and festivals. And of course, having run the Los Angeles Podcast Festival or with my business partners for 6 years, I know what, that world is. And it was nice for you to ask me to speak there and because I like telling people everything that we've gone through and how personal it is. It should be a personal thing. If you're going to be out there creating your own content, you should be doing stuff that is very personal to you, in my opinion.
And you definitely brought the heat. So again, we appreciate it. Now, as you know, those that are listening and that have been following us for a while, we invite outliers to our festivals, to our show, to talk about their lives, right? The things that they're working on now, what led them to kind of live this type of lifestyle where they're kind of making, carving their own path, I guess. And Graham is no exception, right? So we talked about TV film director, podcaster, political activist, comedian. You're a busy man, first of all. You're doing a lot of cool things that people are excited about. Let's kind of talk about what you're working on now and then work our way backwards.
Okay, cool, man. So the main thing I'm doing now, I have a YouTube channel called the Political Vigilante, and it's like a progressive independent media show where I'm talking about a lot of issues that I don't feel the corporate media is covering. It's very left-leaning, but I'm not a huge fan of the two-party system, and which is why, I'm an outlier and I want to see, I think we need to get the corporate money out of politics, and I want to see a radical change in our election system. It needs a complete overhaul. And it's been interesting to do that because I've met, you want to talk about outliers, people who are out there doing independent media and who are progressives, met people like Abby Martin and my good friend Jimmy Dore and, other people like that. I've interviewed some independent candidates that are running for office or running as progressives. And so that's been a really cool thing. It's really opened my eyes up to what the realities of the world are and what we need to do to help fix it. And so that's been a really cool thing. And then, but have been doing Comedy Film Nerds for 10 years now with my co-host, Chris Mancini. I love doing that. We just talk movies every week on our podcast.
Nice.
It's been cool. And we produced, Comedy Film Nerds produced, and I directed Earbuds, the podcasting documentary, which was such a cool experience. We raised the money on Kickstarter and we went all over the world interviewing podcasters and listeners, and that was such an amazing journey as a podcaster, as a filmmaker, and as a comedian, to meet all these different people and to hear their stories and how, podcasting helped them get through depression or battling cancer or an earthquake in Japan. And so it's been really cool to have to have some kind of profound impact on people. Sometimes I think in show business, it's easy to just feel like, especially as a comedian, you're just sort of like, the birthday clown of show business.
Sure.
Sometimes, you're just
Sure.
supposed to go there and make your balloon animals and be the wacky, and you want to like do something that has a little more significance to it. And so I've been very fortunate. I've been able to do that. I'm also working on Craig Shoemaker has a non-for-profit organization called Laughter Heals. And he asked me to do a documentary about Laughter Heals, about really the healing power of laughter. And, he got a little bit of money to start shooting, and we started shooting interviews over the summer, and we're cutting together like a sort of a proof of concept to raise more money to keep going. So that's a really cool documentary that I've been working on. And, I've done work doing promotional videos for Open Primaries, which is a non-for-profit that wants to open up the primaries. And it's really cool. It's a really cool, I like working with people that are advocates for positive causes and are trying to make a positive impact on the world, and, that are trying to be of service. I mean, that's what I want to do with my whole career.
Well, and it's very noticeable for sure. I mean, just kind of like you mentioned, as a comedian, it would be so easy for you to go from gig to gig and make a pretty decent living doing that. But I feel like there's much more to your career and what you're trying to put out there, the content. You're definitely a storyteller as well. It feels like there's a mission behind the things that you do to, I guess you kind of mentioned a little bit already, to help kind of elevate and tell the story and help people around the world. Let's talk about this feeling of mission that I don't know, it feels like you're in the middle of it right now.
Well, thanks, man. And I think mission is really an appropriate term for it, because when I first gave, and I remember it was one of the things I like talking about when I gave the keynote, is, I got into show business and moved to LA, and my first gig was hosting a game show, and called Strip Poker. And that was a lot of fun. I learned so much about television and how it works. And we shot 6 episodes in a day, and we never went over 8 hours because they couldn't afford overtime. And, it was fun, but it was a show where, 2 men and 2 women took their clothes off and we played cards. And, like, it's not, look, not that there's no, I'm not like looking my nose down at frivolous entertainment. There's nothing wrong with frivolous entertainment. We all need it when, like I needed it, just having going through tough things in my life. Like I need to watch something just silly.
Sure.
But, it was going, one of the things, that we were talking about off the air was when I first went to Afghanistan to do a comedy tour for the United States military. That's one of the things that changed within me, is like, I really need a mission. I need a purpose. And, I'm just not going to really pursue the frivolous entertainment stuff that much. If someone wants to offer me something and it works out money and schedule wise, sure, I'm not going to say no. I got to keep the lights on, but where I'm going to spend my time is pursuing projects that to me are meaningful for me. And for me, it's like, you got to be of service. You got to help in some capacity, So, that's really what I try to ask. Like, is what any project I'm potentially going to work on, what is its mission? What is its purpose? How can it change people's views? How can it, open the world up? Right now, there's some potentially dark stuff facing the world right now, and I'm trying to be as forward thinking and as truth seeking and as positive as I can in anything that I'm doing.
And I love that you're open to maybe not necessarily changing your mind completely, but you're definitely open to that discussion with people that, are on the other side of the aisle. I guess you don't have an aisle. You're trying to get rid of that whole thing, but people that think differently, right? You talked about at our festival, you talked about going to Afghanistan and the Middle East and having your comedy specials there. And what kind of smacked you in the face there were the people, the soldiers. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is I really, just to give you a quick little background, I grew up in a very, liberal, left-leaning home, and no immediate family members were ever in the military. So I just had very little knowledge of that culture other than just seeing movies about it. And so, when you're talking to people who are probably way more conservative than I am, I mean, that's, and they're coming up saying, thank you so much for coming over here. Thank you for your service. The amount of appreciation and gratitude that they were showing you. And even if they're like, yeah, I don't agree with your politics, man, but the fact that you came over here to tell jokes, that you're awesome. And
That's
it was
good.
like, wow. I mean, these are probably people who, they're all gun owners. I'm a big advocate for gun control and all this stuff. And so what it showed me, one of the things I learned over there was, trying to apply American thinking to the Middle East, specifically Afghanistan. I remember Colin Powell said that the Middle East is the most complex geopolitical landscape in the history of the human race. And in America, I think we try to oversimplify things and we add either, conservative logic or liberal logic that's still American logic that doesn't apply and is it's too limited in its scope. And so I saw, like I was in a hospital in Afghanistan in Bagram, and there was an Afghani man there in his 40s who brought his 9-year-old daughter. She had kind of a respiratory thing that here in America with our medical would be no big deal. She'd go to the doctor and probably get some medication, but they lived out in some village way out in the middle of nowhere. And so it becomes at that point, this minor thing, and to us is a life-threatening thing. And they had the rule was any local that comes to the gate of any base in Afghanistan gets free healthcare. So this army hospital in a bunch, the best hospital in the country. And this Afghani guy who didn't speak any English, it was me and this other comedian I was with, Shema Taj, and he was thanking us just because we were Americans. Because he traveled weeks to bring his daughter to this hospital. And it was stuff like that where it's like, whatever you thought of the war there was good stuff. I mean, I saw stuff like that happening. And then I also saw, the Halliburton folks making money. And so it was this sort of like, and I would talk to the soldiers and someone was like, yeah, KBR stands for Keep Bush Rich. And, some of them had some views on that. I was like, wow. And they would be very honest with you because you're not in the press. You're not in the military. You're a comic who's coming over. So I heard all different types of stories.
Sure.
I heard, hey, we're doing good thing. We ran security for a girls' school because the Taliban was shooting rockets at a girls' school. And you're like, holy shit. And I heard people say, they're we got to get out of here. I don't want to be here. I mean, I heard everything. And it really opened my eyes. And I remember walking through this base in, I think, in Kandahar. And in one of the rooms, they were watching a movie, and the movie was Fahrenheit 9/11. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't think like, isn't everybody? And this ex-military guy that fought in Vietnam that was a Department of Defense contractor that was taking us around. He goes, yeah, you don't think there's Democrats or liberals in the military? It's definitely more right-leaning, and I was like, okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so it really, like, I was more willing to hear another point of view or a different view. If at the end of the conversation I went, I don't know that I agree with this, I'm willing to hear it more. And understand too, like, after the recession hit, in 2008 and I was in Iraq doing shows, people were like, oh, I re-enlisted because there's no jobs back home. So I had to take a $20,000 re-enlistment bonus to go to war.
Wow.
I was like, man, that's messed up, you know? So I really saw a lot of stuff. I mean, I fed Afghani kids through barbed wire when they ran along the side of a minefield. And
so what did that do to you on the way back? Right. Again, we kind of talked about this a little bit offline or at the conference. It didn't necessarily change your core beliefs, but it opened up a lot of, it opened up your eyes to a lot of different, I don't know, things that maybe you weren't thinking about before. But what I like about the story is that we as a nation, as a world, need more of exactly what you did, right? You went out there and you were literally almost in the trenches, right? I mean, seeing what it was like, and then now you come home and now you're spreading awareness and positivity and all these things through the work that you do. It's so divisive right now, the political spectrum and the things that we're kind of going through, and it's so unhealthy. But we need to kind of open our eyes a little bit more and talk to our neighbor that maybe has different political views, and I think it's going to help us a lot more than it is now.
Yeah, I firmly agree with that, and I think that, like, one of the reasons I don't align myself with any political party is I think that sort of the people that are really in charge, the 1%ers or whatever you want to call them, I think it's sort of by design to keep us separated, red state, blue state.
Agreed.
White, male, female, whatever. I think that's because if we all got together and went, wait a minute, they're sticking it to all of us.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, seeing that, hearing somebody say, I had to I don't want to be in Iraq, but I needed the 20 grand. There's no jobs. They've, NAFTA shipped out my jobs. I don't have any, so it's like, wow. And I and then seeing, people with good intentions, but like the bigger system or the bigger machine is sort of forcing them to not do what they ultimately thought they were doing, which is justice and freedom and stuff like that. And,
yeah, it gets so complicated, right?
Yeah. And you start to see really it's, I talked to a lot of vets who were like, man, I went over there thinking I was defending America. And then I feel like I was just defending corporations and money. And you see the potential for all the good we can do, like the hospital and, feeding these young kids who are, it's such a tough situation. I mean, and I think about my I don't have kids of my own, but I have 6 nieces and nephews, and they've never there's no minefields where they play.
Sure.
They're not having to go get food through razor wire. And it really makes you go, there's something off in the world right now. And it's real. We need to really get back to balance and like you say, talking to our neighbors, because like, I think people have way more in common than you think.
Let's talk about this being a part of your career, right? You're kind of a statesman. You've been doing this for quite a while now. I'm assuming there's a lot of ups and downs, career-wise, right? There's the good years, the lean years, all that stuff. Your job, the things that you're trying to accomplish, in my opinion, right? I mean, and let's talk about it. It feels like a grind, right? The highs are high, the lows are low. You can be an executive somewhere and having a steady paycheck and, clocking in, clocking out, all that stuff. But yet you choose to take some of the lows that I'm assuming have been in your career. Let's talk about that. Why this? Why now? Or why throughout your career?
I don't know. Maybe I'm not very smart ever.
It feels like you're following your passion.
No, that's absolutely true. That's what I believe you got to do. I mean, jokes aside, yeah, I think you have to follow your passion. I think that's key. I realized at a young age, I don't think I could ever hold a real job. I just couldn't, I remember telling my mom, I don't want to have a job where I wear a suit. I just said that to her. Um,
And
and
that's
so,
probably the last thing a mom wants to hear, right? Oh no, here we
no, that's
go.
really, it's funny because it's like my parents, my dad was a theater professor and, they met in acting school and stuff. And so they kind of are like, they kind of have themselves to blame, I
Yeah,
guess.
sure.
But the up and down thing can be extremely challenging. And I think that's probably one of the top reasons why people don't go into it. But then I think about, what I've gotten to do, where I've gotten to, I've done comedy shows in China, Japan, Australia. We shot part of Earbuds in Australia and Japan. I've been all through the Middle East, because I'm a stand-up comedian and a filmmaker. And so, I took Earbuds. We got into this comedy Cluj Film Festival, which is in Cluj-Napoca, which is a city north of Bucharest in Romania. And I did that 2 years ago. That's the only reason I would ever be in Romania is because they brought my film there.
Nice.
So that's the things you just got to pursue what you love. And, I'll give you a story right now. I just got finished directing and was the executive producer of this First Nations comedy experience, which was the first ever Native American stand-up comedy series. It was for this network FNX. My friend hired me. I'm not Native, but my friend that I went to college with, he is Native American, and he came to me a year and a half ago and said, do you have any show ideas? And I said, Native stand-up comedy, it's never been done. I just like doing stuff that's never been done. And it was such an amazing experience. It was really cool. It's FNX is a channel that's carried on some PBS channels in about 16 states, I think, or 17. It's a really cool experience. We shot 13 shows. I put 49 comedians on TV, and I'm sitting here waiting for season 2. There was a delay, and I don't know. And I thought we'd be shooting in the fall already, but there's been some delay because that world is all dependent upon grant funding. And there's a very sort of lengthy process. Once you get the grant, it has to be approved, and then the money has to, it's a whole different set of hoops to jump through. And so I'm sitting here like, kind of having to scramble to get some work. And I just directed 13 episodes of a TV show that I helped create. Sure. So that's the game I'm in. And sometimes I have to just remember, I'm a big movie fan, obviously. I always think of that scene in Godfather 2 where Michael Corleone goes to Hyman Roth about, who made the hit on his life. And Hyman Roth tells that story about Mo Green. And he goes, and I never asked who gave the order. This is the life we chose. So I always think of that, like, this is the life I chose. What it also means is, last Thursday, I just took time off work and I was working at home all day making videos and stuff. And I just took a break and I went down and I went surfing. So
fantastic.
That's the trade-off.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've always been able to make a living and I know how to live lean when I need to and save money. And that's what I did. And that's what I'm doing. And you got to have some faith, man. You got to have that, and I look to the past, I say, I've never been on the street. I've never been hungry. I've established myself in this business a lot, and I work hard, and I if you're a good person and you're honest and upfront and decent to work with, and then I think work comes your way. And that's just the approach you have to have, because I don't want to do, I've had that battle in my head for years, man. Should I have gotten a real job? Should have this and this? And I always come back to a steady paycheck. If it wasn't what I wanted to do, I would die inside.
Agreed. You'd go crazy for sure. Yeah. I truly believe that your health would decline a little bit, right? Your mental state. Yeah. That's no way to do it if that's not what you were, if that's not in you, for sure. It's one of those things where, even with us, right, we're kind of doing what we want with the festivals and the podcasting and the media, and I can make a lot more money and we're getting offered all the time, these different jobs, but why? Man, I'm
Yeah.
at home with the kids when I want to be home. We travel with the family when we want to travel, and thanks for no thanks. At least not now, right? I mean, things are going well enough that I'm okay with this. It's a trade-off, like you mentioned.
Right.
And so is this space, the business that you talk about, is it as cutthroat as it seems like it would be from the outside?
I don't, I mean, it can be, you have to remember that it is a business, right? You got to remember, and it's hard to not take it personally because you're selling yourself.
Sure.
You're selling creative, which comes out of you. It comes out of your experience and your heart and your soul and your life. So it's hard to not take it seriously when someone says, nah, we don't want you, or we're hiring someone else, or we're not buying your movie or whatever. But you just have to then realize, and I think this is the thing that many creatives need to learn, is you've got to learn the business side of it. You've got to learn, and not to become heartless. Don't teach yourself how to become heartless, but you got to understand when you're pitching to business people that their whole world is black and white, dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be realistic about the thing that you're doing. If this person's going to invest this money, are they going to get a return on their investment? Can you deliver that return on their investment? Is your project realistic? We all think we're going to make a thing and it's going to make millions of dollars and we're going to win awards. And, we all have those thoughts, but you have to temper them. And with what am I doing this for? If I'm doing this to try to get famous, then I don't know. If I'm just trying to write something commercial to make a bunch of money, fine, then go do that. But you got to understand, I always try to put yourself in that person's shoes. Like if somebody just came to me and said, and I had a bunch of money and they was like, Graham, give me all this money to make this thing. I'd have to be like, well, wait a minute. What is it? Where's the money going? What's it going to do? Show me a business plan. And I think when I start looking at the business that way, it doesn't seem so cutthroat to me. It just seems like, well, this is business.
Yeah, you're definitely a creative, right? But you need to have some business sense as well,
Mm-hmm.
Not just to understand the rejection sometimes, but you're marketing yourself, right? You have to. I'm assuming there are contracts, there are business decisions that you need to make.
There's right. all that stuff, and I think the smartest thing I would say is, when you work as a producer, when you work behind the camera, in front of the camera, producing co-producing a Los Angeles podcast festival, and producing and directing Earbuds, and producing and directing this TV show. I understand the budget constraints. I understand the politics that are involved. That's everywhere, and I always put myself in that position when I'm going to just go on an audition or something. I have to go, well, if I fit their thing and their money and their whatever else, then I got a good shot at getting the job. So that if I don't get it, I don't have to sit there and go, oh, I must be whatever, ugly and stupid or whatever. So it's just that's the key. And I would suggest every creative learn some business stuff, get into the production side, even for just the experience of seeing the realities of budgets and time constraints and other people's stuff. You're asking, well, I just want this famous person to do my thing. And it's like, well, everyone's asking them that. So you have to find something that makes it appealing to them, and then don't take it personally. Because I've been on both sides. I've been super busy and people are asking me to do this, that, and the other thing. I was like, man, I don't know if I got the time for that. And I've had people get all bent out of shape over that. I'm just like, well, I don't know what to tell you. And because I've also, as a producer, seen so many mistakes that performers and creatives make and how they interact. They send some pissy email or something like that. And you're just like, well, God, do I want to work with this person if they're going to be a pain in the ass?
Yeah, it's all about you. Obviously, you're playing it right. Whatever you're doing, you were very helpful when we invited you out. You were very gracious. You asked if there was anything you could do to help. when we invited you out to the podcast festival. And right, people want to work with good people. I mean, I don't care how talented you are. Dick, right? Nobody's going to want to work with you for the.
Yeah, I know. It's there's and especially in show business, in specifically Los Angeles, everyone here, there's a lot of very talented people in front of the camera, behind the camera. There's really great crew people. I mean, they're really good. So if you're a pain in the ass, you're easily replaced.
What I like about you, right? Again, that you're doing what you love. You are in LA, right? In the business that you're in, a very glitzy, glamorous especially for those that are on the outside. For those that kind of want to get into what you're doing, whether it's, being a producer, a comedian, podcaster, all the things that you're doing, some advice for these young guys that are trying to come up, young guys and young gals that are trying to come up in the business.
Anybody out there that's trying to come up in the business, I would suggest, find whatever it is that you're passionate about. And I said this in the keynote, is like, also in the niche is where the money is, especially now where there's 10,000 options versus when I was a kid and there was 3 channels. So find that thing you're passionate about. As I said, like, find a piece of ground that's, a foot wide and dig for a mile.
I love that.
And do it because you love it. Do it because you want to do it. Do it because it has a value to you and society. And then be a nice, decent, honest, upfront person. Like, a quick no, I would prefer a quick no than somebody giving me a long maybe.
Yeah.
Like, just say, you know what, I can't, I used to, when I was younger, I'd fall into this trying to people please, and I'd say yes to everything, and I couldn't commit, and people like, well, then you're coming across as flaky, or you're not reliable, or whatever. And so I would pursue what you want to pursue, and establish too good relationships, personal and professional relationships, because there's people I'm again, the head of FNX was a guy I was in a college comedy group with. All right. We were 20 years old in a sketch comedy troupe at the University of Arizona. And 30 years later, he hires me to make a TV show with him. So those relationships you make and how you conduct yourself is how people are going to see you. So if you're late, you're always got to, and you can't deliver, it's always somebody else's fault. People aren't going to want to work with you.
Yeah.
You show up on time and you get shit done. And when you screw up, own it. Don't come to me with a bunch of excuses. Come to me and say, I'm sorry, this happened. I want to, that I'll listen to, and it's all about the relationships, and it's all about your own work ethic and develop habits. I mean, I read the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People years ago. I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I read, the Warren Buffett Way. It's a book about Warren Buffett, and I studied that stuff in addition to all these biographies, like Miles Davis biography and stuff like that. View it this way, right? So if you're a professional sports team, if you're in the NBA, look what Golden State is doing. Do that. There's a reason, like, that's what everyone, like in baseball, this team won with pitching, and like, do that. So look at people you admire, whose work you admire, and figure out what they did, and when you're an opportunity to take the low road or take a weaselly way is going to be presented to you. Don't do it.
That's huge. It's difficult, right?
Yes.
Especially when you're young and starving, and maybe you're thinking, this is the quick way, right? This is how I'm going to make my millions, or this is how I'm going to get noticed. Yeah, that can ruin careers.
Yeah. It could just always plant a seed in the back of somebody's mind. Wow, that person, man, when push comes to shove, they might just do something weaselly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I told you in person there at our festival, right? You came in and you killed it, and you stuck around, you were shaking hands, taking pictures, you were hanging out with people for a bit as well. And that's huge, right? I mean, we've had other keynotes, other presenters that kind of come in, do their hour, and then they're out, right? Which is fine. But those that kind of stick around and chat for a bit, that goes a long way for not just for like people like us that are putting on the event, but for the attendees, right? That corporate veil, not corporate veil, but just that separation between speaker and attendee went away. And then that's where we have the best events, when our speakers and our attendees are kind of hanging out and chatting for a bit. And you were more than gracious enough with your time to be able to do that. And so now I consider you part of the Outlier family. And so no doubt that we're going to invite you to more of our events throughout the country as we put these on. And we're going to have you back on the show in 3 years. So let's talk about this for a sec. When we have you back on the show in 3 years, what are we going to be talking about?
Wow. What I'm hoping we're talking about is we've done at least one more, if not two more seasons of the Native American stand-up series, because I really like doing that. I love giving comics work and watching interesting comedians perform, and also getting like the most underserved segment of the population a voice. I hope that, you know, the Laughter Heals documentary is completed and it's done well, and it's really helping people use laughter to heal themselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. I hope there's like any more work that's more advocacy, you know, doing more advocacy for any type of groups that haven't had as much of a voice. And, you know, I hope I'm still surfing.
Of course.
You know, that's where I hope to be in 3 years, is just doing way more directing and producing and still performing. And also, you know, my show Political Vigilante is 3 years from now will be growing, and the progressive comedy tours that I've done with Ron Placone, like those are growing. I hope 3 years from now we're selling out bigger venues and really just kind of expanding on all of the stuff I've been working on. And, you know, Chris Mancini and I, Comedy Film Nerds, have produced a couple of scripted films by 3 years from now. That's where I hope I'm at 3 years from now.
That's obviously very doable with the things that you've done in the past, things you're doing now. You're setting it up to kind of continue to knock it out of the ballpark with whatever you do. And listen, we're big fans. We're going to continue to follow you. Wish you nothing but success. For those that are listening that want to get to know you a little bit more, want to follow your career, right? The shows, all that good stuff. Where can we find you online?
Well, first, thanks, Ever, man. I was really, you know, I'm happy. I'm honored you wanted to bring me into the Outlier family, because you guys ran a really cool festival. I know what it's like to run a festival, so I know one has run well.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, you know, it was really cool, and you got a great staff and a great event, and I hope to do many more of those. Whenever you need me, man, hit me up for sure.
Absolutely.
And to everybody out there listening, the best way is to just go to GrahamElwood.com. Go to Graham Elwood. All my social media is there. The 2 movies I directed, my YouTube show, my podcast, it's all my tour dates, merch, all of it. My Patreon page, man, go to patreon.com/Graham Elwood. There's a bunch of ways to support what I'm doing. So just go to GrahamElwood.com.
So Outliers, you can go to outlierhq.com. That's outlierhq.com. First of all, subscribe to the podcast, rate, review it, share it with your friends. But there you're going to find links to the website, to the comedy shows, to the movies that Graham is working on. Again, he's the real deal. He's doing some amazing things. Follow him, say hello, go to his shows. Graham, this has been amazing. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and for your words of wisdom, and just for your great storytelling on this show. We're big fans, and again, we wish you nothing but success.
Cool. Thanks, Ever. I really appreciate it, man.
Outliers, we'll talk to you tomorrow.